All right, Elon Musk is scoring key wins in the Texas legislature, moves that could significantly advance the interest of his companies, including SpaceX, Tesla, and X, formerly known as Twitter. During the 2025 legislative session, Musk's influence was felt across a dozen bills pushed by his lobbyists. Nearly all of those measures passed, granting protections to the launch sites of SpaceX, expanding authority over Boca Chica Beach, tightening rules around backup power generators marketed by Tesla, and criminalizing interference with space operations. So behind the scenes, Musk was employing a dozen Texas lobbyists and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to sway lawmakers. Those efforts included meetings with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and orchestrated public comments from SpaceX employees. Joining us is Lauren McGahee, investigative reporter with the Texas Newsroom, who has been tracking Musk's political playbook inside the Capitol. Lauren, welcome back to Hello Houston. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
We're good. I mean, I was reading an article, your article, that Musk started this whole venture at the Texas legislature in 2013. He's been lobbying for change.
At least. I mean, he's been in Texas for a dozen years. I think a lot of people don't realize how far back Musk's investment in the state has gone. I mean, he's been down growing the SpaceX facility near Brownsville. That was more than 10 years ago. And so this isn't a new thing, but I think his investment is starting to pay off. And just a shout out also to the YouTube commenter. I'm probably going to get some comments on the shirt that I'm wearing today.
Yes, we don't allow cat sweatshirts, Lauren. I don't know what you're thinking.
Again, a
It's
reminder.
public radio. It's public radio. We're relaxed.
Again, a reminder to everyone, you can watch us on the YouTube channel. Just look for the Houston Public Media account. And when you do, you can see us live and you can see what we're all wearing since we're talking about it. Lauren, what I find fascinating about this is so much attention has been spent on Elon Musk and what he's been doing at the federal level that we often overlook what's been happening at the local level, our statewide. And it has had a major influence, but it wasn't just by chance that he's just a businessman who has been pushing what he wants. It's very heavily orchestrated.
Right. I mean, any big business in Texas is going to have their lobbying core. The AT&Ts, the oil and gas companies, they're going to have their designated army of lobbyists at the legislature pushing those issues. But Elon Musk's investment here really spans some really interesting enterprises that sometimes politically seem to conflict with each other, right? We have like clean energy stuff coming from Tesla. We have the aerospace issues with SpaceX, which conflict with environmentalist concerns. And so it's created created interesting bedfellows at the Capitol where sometimes you see people for Elon's businesses on the one hand, against them on the other. And but at the end of the day, he's getting most of what he wants
One of the
done.
And one of the things I
Go
found
ahead.
interesting was the General Land Office, is in control of the beaches, and all the beaches in Texas are open, free to the public beaches. But Elon Musk wants to control the beach around his new city. What is it, Space City, Texas? He wants to control that so he can shut it down when he's trying to launch a rocket. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Texas is kind of unique in that we have it in our state constitution that the public access to the beach is one of our rights in the Texas Constitution. And our constitution goes further than a lot of other states that have the same kind of thing. So that means usually that the control over shuttering a public beach would have to be involved with some kind of county level government, and that's where it's been for a long time there. But they just incorporated SpaceX outside of Brownsville into its own city. It is now the city of Starbase, and it's 99% made up of SpaceX employees. And this legislation that passed and became law this session will give the city of Starbase more control over when to shutter that beach. It shifts the control over these beaches to a state entity that has a former SpaceX employee sitting on the board. And so, this didn't happen by accident. This was all by design so that Musk could gain more control over the land around his facilities, more privacy around those facilities, and see that investment really pay off.
Talk to me historically about how different this is from when we think back to the Industrial Revolution and companies building towns. I come from upstate New York. Endicott Johnson Shoes built Endicott and Johnson City. I mean, IBM had their worker towns. That went out of fashion, but how different is the way he approached it here than those companies did 150 years ago?
Right. I mean, it's pulling a bit from that same playbook, and pardon the tortured pun, but kind of taking it into the stratosphere. He, a lot of these company towns, when you think of like Hershey, Pennsylvania, for example, the grid of the town was laid out, with the help of the company, et cetera. But the elected body running the town of these company towns wasn't often made up 100% of employees from that company, right? There was still some give and take. There were residents living in the town that didn't work for the company. That's not the case in these towns that Musk is creating here in Texas. They're kind of completely self-sufficient, made up of his employees, except for maybe a handful of people. And so that gives him a lot more control. And we're going to see that, I think, going forward at Starbase. You've probably also heard of this effort outside of Austin, this town called Snailbrook. He's also floated incorporating a town out there that's in Bastrop County, and that's around his SpaceX and Boring Company facility out there. So I don't think the city of Starbase, that concept is the last time he's going to create his own town. And yeah, it's in the guise of the kind of traditional company towns, but taking it even 2 or 3 steps further.
Well, and he's also got some, you tell us, he also had a law passed making it a lot easier to have a generator, like fewer rules about generators. And it happens to be the generators that Tesla makes for your home.
Right. In past sessions, the Tesla goals that he was floating had a lot more to do with the cars, with his EVs. But this session, it was almost all of the public priorities that Tesla had to do with home power generators. These are like the things like the power wall, right? You could have on your home, or these things called BESS, BESS, battery energy storage systems, which are big, large scale facilities that store battery energy for long periods of time in order to have some extra energy in case of like a grid failure, right? And these large scale facilities are popping up all over the state in rural areas, starting to become an issue for some residents because they're big, they're noisy, and he wanted some, extra protection for them. So they were actually able to help kill a bill that would have allowed local entities to regulate those facilities. And then he got some other legislation passed for that. So he's really shifting into this battery energy and home energy business here in Texas. So
knowing the details of all of this, is it necessarily just for his product, or is he helping the industry that does this kind of work? Where do we see it?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, in terms of like EVs or AVs, autonomous vehicles, right? There was also a bill passed on regulating autonomous vehicles. Maybe Musk was the one that kind of brought that concept or helped bring that concept more into the mainstream. But now the EV market is so big that anything that Tesla pushes that passes helps all EV companies, right? But when we're talking about the aerospace legislation in particular, there's very few private aerospace companies that have the kind of footprint that SpaceX has, and in Texas especially. I mean, SpaceX just blows all the rest of them away. We do have Blue Origin here. That's, the Amazon founders company, but it's much smaller, not as many government contracts, if any at all. And so even though like the aerospace bills might help any spaceport, for example, any private spaceport, his spaceports are so dominant that they really get the bulk of the positive after effects of this kind of legislation.
We have a few more minutes with Lauren McGahee of the Texas Newsroom. If you'd like to join or ask Lauren a question, 713-440-8786. 8870. Lauren, I'm kind of surprised because a lot of people may not know this, that there was an EV credit in Texas for a long time of $2,500 if you bought an electric vehicle, and then $7,500 on a federal level. So it's pretty good payback. And of course, Trump is taking that out of the big, beautiful bill, which supposedly is what really has Elon Musk ticked off. I'm surprised he didn't try to get that passed in Texas, at least some kind of a electrical vehicle credit in Texas. Why did that not come up, do you think?
So there were a couple of kind of green energy pieces of legislation that were floated or proposed mostly by Democrats, and some of those didn't do as well as some of the EV or the green energy bills that Republicans carried. And so we are seeing Republicans in Texas kind of buying into the EV concept or the green energy concept a bit more if it's attached to Elon's companies, because his political transformation, his move rightward, has kind of given them the ability to vote for that. But we're not totally there yet. We're not moved all the way over where they're going to just vote for any kind of credit in that area. There's still a lot of political opposition from the GOP to alternative energy. We see it with attacks on the wind energy market and that kind of thing. And so I don't think we're quite there.
Well,
Elon Musk's
it wouldn't have been new.
Quite there.
Right.
Right.
It wouldn't have been a new thing. It would have just been a reinstatement. So I would have thought he would have at least tried.
Yeah.
I can ask around and get you that answer.
Let me take you under the hood a little bit of all of this and the influence of money and power on politics. Nothing new there. The way he goes about it, is he flirting with anything that is untoward or leans towards the illegal, or is he staying in lines of funding, giving to politicians that happens to be paying off because he's got deep pockets?
You know, I have to say I don't have an answer to that. We have a FOIA law here in Texas, Freedom of Information law. It's called the Texas Public Information Act, that allows any member of the public to ask for government records. This is supposed to ensure transparency to how our laws are being passed, what our politicians are, how they're making their money, how they're spending their money, who's giving them donations, et cetera, right? There are so many carve-outs in the law now that it's really difficult to track that closed door conversation. So all of the stuff in the reporting that I've put out recently has been based off of Ethics Commission filings with the lobbyist filings, campaign contribution filings, some responses I've gotten from people like Dan Patrick to FOIA requests, emails between him and some of Musk's employees. But a lot of what I asked for, I did not get. I got a lot of rejections because there are so many carve-outs in the Public Information Act law now that I can just be denied emails, communications, calendars, get full pages that are redacted. So it's hard to get past. It's hard to get as deep as I would like to get without having people, in the inner circle sharing that information.
Well, he seems to have unbridled permission to put as many satellites in space for the internet and Starlink as he wants. And he's put thousands. Every time a rocket goes up, it takes another satellite up there.
And those are being made here in Texas. Those are being produced out at the Bastrop facility. They've upped that production 2-3 times. They're double, tripling the size of that facility. So this is all things that are Texas lawmakers and the Texas business laws here are, encouraging that massive growth.
And people love Starlink that I've talked to. I don't use it, but especially if you're in a rural area or on a ranch or an oil field, Starlink is your savior for the internet. So,
well, like a coin, there's always two sides to all of it. So it may be good at one hand, but what's going on behind it? Thank you so much for your reporting and covering this.
All right, Lauren McGay. Yeah, and I love your shirt, by the way.
Thanks.
It's terrific. You don't look like you're going to go mow the lawn. Lauren's an investigative reporter with Texas Newsroom. Thank you so much for being here.